the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
AVWeek is produced and distributed through a partnership with AVNation and Rave Publications. For more information, go to ravepubs.com/AVNation. This is AVWeek, episode 26 for Friday, January 27th, 2012. Donald Trump's hair.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week. It's time for AV Week, your weekly roundup of audiovisual news and information. I'm your host, Tim Albright. With us this week is George Tucker. George is the engineering coordinator at World Stage. Hello, sir.
Hey, hello, everybody.
And with us for the first time on the show, but this is not his first time talking with AVNation, is John Huntington. John is the professor of entertainment technology at City Tech and also the author of Control Systems for Live Entertainment. How are you, sir?
Oh, very good. Thanks for having me on.
And if you haven't caught it, please do. It's a special that George did with John some months ago, talking about control systems and more specifically live control systems. But John every year takes his class and they do one of the fanciest versions of a haunted house I think I've ever seen. So if you go to his website, controlgeek.net, you still have that stuff up there, John?
Yep, I have a whole, it's called the Gravesend Inn, and I actually have a tag for entries on that because we've been doing it 10 years now, I guess, and now it's all managed switches and VLANs and networks and stuff, so it's, I still haven't actually written up the networking part. That's on my list probably for the next week here.
Slacker.
Yeah, if you go to his website, his website is controlgeek.net, and it's quite impressive. And if you're in the New York area next Halloween, I would check that out. So
definitely.
Today on AV Week, we're going to be talking about Pico projectors and eye projectors all around. Also, kind of delving into what in the world is 4K really. InfoComm and IATSE have geared up and teamed up for some certification stuff, and downloading physical objects from our buddies over at Pirate Bay. I don't believe in piracy. I think it's wrong, just in case the DOJ is listening. But first, this came down actually kind of this morning. So I kind of threw the guys a curveball in case you're ever curious how we do this show. I try to give people a couple of days notice and a couple of days to read all the stories because like today we have a stack of them. And so, you have a couple of days to kind of chill out, relax, sip your coffee and read your stories, except this week. This morning, our buddy Julie Jacobson over at CE Pro wrote an interesting piece on Kaleidescape, and so I'm throwing the guys a curveball today. Kaleidescape and the DVD CCA group have kind of been at odds since 2004. The DVD CCA have sued Kaleidescape, and if you don't know what Kaleidescape is a server. It's a media server. It's a high-end media server at that. And they allow you to rip in your DVDs, the DVDs that you have legally purchased from Best Buy or Amazon or wherever. You put it in their device and you rip it in, and then you can do with your remote control, bring it up as you wish, and the art's there and everything. It's a really, really cool system. Well, the DVD CCA, the DVD Copy Control Association, took issue with what they were doing. They said that they were breaking the license agreement that Kaleidescape had with the DVD CCA, and a judge this month has tentatively ruled in favor of the DVD CCA. In essence, telling Kaleidescape, your business model is illegal. George, we'll start with you. Give me, first of all, your 2 cents on this initial ruling and kind of an overall, what does this mean for our industry? And because, here's a good it's a media server, so it's a content delivery device that a lot of high-end residential and even some commercial applications are for. So what does this mean for the industry, both resi and professional?
Well, it's not good, in my opinion. I mean, it's not the best thing that could have happened, but this has been going on for a long time. This is a couple of years in the process where the DVD CCA was saying, well, you broke this rule, and they went back saying, well, technically we didn't. So the DVD CCA came back with a new rule, which is the most inane rule I've ever heard, saying, yes, you've got fair use rights to do this, like we did in the old days of tape decks and stuff. But what you need to do is, yes, you can rip it, but you need to keep that physical medium, i.e. that DVD, in a carousel player that's part of the network, so it's available to the system at all times. And my first thought on this, when we talked about this originally, was this is like Blazing Saddles and the governor sitting there writing up his laws going, gentlemen, we got to protect our phony baloney jobs. Somebody give the governor harumph. And I know the courts are saying that there's some legal basis for it, but guys, you're trying to kill an industry. You're only going to delay it. It's not going to stop. Cut it out.
Yeah.
But it's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt installers. Like, I can't do that. You have to spend $8,000 more for a proper system so I can store your media in a physical way in the system so we don't break the law.
Now, real quickly, George, kind of give people, for the younger people listening, what was the whole, the VCR ruling basically came down to, and please correct me, either of you, if I'm wrong, because you're purchasing a piece of physical media that can and will break down over time, you have the right to make a copy of that, a backup of it. Not to give it to anybody, not to sell, not to distribute, but to save in case your original copy goes down. Is that right, roughly?
Yeah, I mean, it was all based on, like, the fair use rulings,
yeah.
Although I think, John, you have far more knowledge on this than I do.
Yeah, it's been so long I don't remember exactly the details of that. But I think the other big issue in that years ago in that VCR sort of tape decision was also that people had the right to time shift stuff, and that was a big deal because the networks were, of course, fighting against that. And of course now, I mean, that's something they sell, cable companies sell on your DVR. And I think this whole thing is just more of a just another ham-handed and stupid move by a dinosaur industry that just doesn't get it. And it's not. Of course, I think they should be able to protect their content, but I think through the DMCA and stuff like that, there's plenty of mechanisms to do that, and to beat up on consumers who want to watch their content. I think is just stupid. And I think you mentioned before, but I'll go ahead.
Is it really protecting I just want to pick out a point there. Is it really protecting the content producers, or is it the physical medium producers who are getting protected here?
Bingo.
From my understanding, it's the latter.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because I'm reading this thing as we're talking now, but it does say that the MPAA, I think you're right, because the MPAA is not involved in this. It's this DVD CCA, which is it's listed in here, but it's the Content Copy Association. And obviously they're working together, but yeah, and if that's the case, it's even stupider. Just protecting a physical media is, a way to, it's a dying area, and people don't really care how it's delivered as long as they can watch it. And I think
it really is akin to. Go ahead.
Oh, I just saying we touched on this briefly, but the whole recent thing with Louis C.K. where he shot his own comedy special and put it online with no copy protection at all, any variety, and charged $5 for it, and he made so much money they ended up giving away, tens of thousands of dollars to charity and giving everybody involved in his show a bonus and all this stuff. And obviously he's an established artist, but all that money went straight to him without going to a Sony or some big studio in the way. So I think
John, shh, don't tell them that.
That's right.
Well, doesn't this go back to there's that theory by Kevin Kelly, the guy who started Whole Earth magazine and was the managing editor of Wired for a long time, about something called 1,000 True Fans.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the social media show. That you may not really need anymore. Like the punks in the '80s and the alternative guys from Seattle showed that independent labels can be there without having to need the mass distribution because the audience will come to it if they get enough notice about it. In the same way with 1,000 True Fans, if you have a product, how many fans at how much price do you need to make a decent living? You don't need the in-between people. Not really. I mean, if you want to tour in Hong Kong and put big flamethrowers on your show, maybe you do, but otherwise you don't. So they're fighting a losing battle of trying to retain an old business model that's not going to last. It just isn't.
Okay, so let's take that thought a bit further. So you don't need the flamethrowers. You may want them, and eventually you might be able to get them. But if you are really in it for the art or for just creating your music and getting it out there or getting your content out there, I mean, take the social show or take this show. You know, we are the epitome of a grassroots effort. You know, we don't have, you know, a big budget. We don't have anything like that. And so I guess my question is, where does the next Louis C.K. get his outlet? Because like John said, Louis C.K. was an established artist. He had already been a part of the system. He had already been a part of the corporate system. You know, he had specials and stuff produced for him. And then he took, you know, the platform he already had and then said, hey, look what I can do over here. Where does the next guy come up, though, who doesn't have that platform?
Yeah, and I think they're going to...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Talking over each other.
No. Go ahead, John.
Oh, and I think in one way that I think that the next Louis C.K. will figure that out. And I think I listened to the Mark Maron's podcast, which I guess I can't say the name of on this
show.
Well, it's WTF is the initial.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and but there's hundreds of thousands of comics still out there hustling it out, and you know, that's the way the bulk of them make their living, just like musicians. I mean, which is great for us in the live performance businesses. You know, the record companies aren't really making the money anymore. They're not promoting the concerts, but they're still out there because that's the way they can make money. And the people are still paying, I think, too much in some cases. But I dug out my first concert ticket, which was Led Zeppelin in 1977, and it was $7.50. So I think in constant dollars, that's not the $300 it would cost if John Bonham was reincarnated and they went on tour. So, because they'd be charging enormous amounts of fees. And the difference is back then, it was a promotional event for the record company, and now that's the way they make money. So, and then also, like you said, there's the 1,000 fans things, and there's hundreds of thousands of independent artists out there that they're not getting rich, but they're making a living, and they go out on tour, and it's a rough business, but that's the nature of that whole thing. But I think the other thing we see now. Oh, just one other quick point before I forget, but the other thing we see now is that a lot of big events that we see, like here in New York, are and I'm sure, George, you know all about this, but they're sponsored by, some company because that's the way they can gauge their consumers. So they've just found another way. The old print ad or whatever isn't working for them anymore, so they go hire a band or sponsor a film festival or put a car on the side of a building or something like that, which is all great because people still want to be engaged, with other people no matter what, and that's not going to change.
That is true. You asked earlier though, Tim, where the young or the the not famous going to get this kind of ability to do this, right? Well, here's my answer: is that the millennials, they're already in the system. They're already doing it. They have certain fan base, which may be just their friends, but the transition or the expansion of that is not exponential for them. It's just a growth. It's an evolution. They're already making content. They're already posting content. They're already getting people to see their stuff. It just becomes, when do you translate it into a real performance where people will come to see you live, then want to pay a very small amount to see more of it? Some of it will be free. Bands have done this. So there's no real transition for them.
And the big companies and the big artists are still always going to be there. If you look at like Lady Gaga, just Google what's her real name, Stephanie DiDonato or something like that. Yeah. Just Google that, and you can find her singing at the Bitter End here in New York, maybe 7-8 years ago. It's just her and a piano and some band. So she was putting this stuff up on YouTube, and then now she's probably the best known name in the world right now. So people will figure this stuff out, and I think the system. I never worry about trying to protect those kind of things because I think it kind of not trying to protect intellectual property. As somebody, I see my book popping up online in PDF format once in a while, which is really annoying. But of course, people have a right to go after that, but the DMCA is already there, and it's that structure is already in place. So I think it'll work out. I think it's basically sort of a reflection of the culture and the system will generate the new solution to the problem.
Yeah, I think what we're doing is I said this about SOPA and about ACTA that's coming up and all that stuff, is that really what these guys are trying to do is fix a cut on the finger by cutting off the hand. Oh my God, I cut my finger, chop off the hand. it's just a wrong-headed. Yes, there's a problem. It's not as significant as you say. Yes, your bottom line as a CEO's salary might get a little bit of a hit because your stockholders are upset, but you're doing it wrong. Stop.
And the great thing
the highways were not built.
Sorry, I'd say the great thing about the whole SOPA PIPA thing is that I think the internet has now proven itself to be more powerful than the MPAA, and you see Chris Dodd, former senator up there at the MPA, just spouting nonsense on this issue. And again, I don't disagree with the intent of it at all. It's just that it gets very technical, but the whole idea of hiding things in the DNS and basically not having any due process at all and just taking down a site just because some corporation says it can come down, I think that's what people are objecting to. I mean, nobody objects to an artist or a studio, and I can't say nobody, but most rational people, I don't think, object to an artist or a studio trying to protect their art and their content, but you got to come out about it a better way than that. And then also, it seems like they don't need it anyway. If they can take down Mega Upload, then what do they need SOPA for?
Yeah.
Well, look what's happening with ACTA. 22 countries have certified it. And if you don't know what ACTA is, it's a sort of global internet agreement, sort of UN-based, that will actually provide censorship. So what it's basically doing is it's the next step in not just dictatorships, but corporate dictatorships looking to dictate to you what you can get and where, not just fair use. Like, I want my fair use. I want to be able to store it and get it anywhere. You give me that ability to get it on any device, anywhere, and I'll stop protesting about you cutting off the pipe. But if you force me to have one type of medium, you're not going to win. You're just not going to win. Even with ACTA, there's going to be ways around it, and it'll be this false, worthless law that will only serve to benefit dictatorships, both either corporate or governmental.
And every form of copy protection ever invented has been defeated. I say that with no basis and no supporting evidence, but they've all been defeated one way or another, and that's always going to happen. But I still think the vast majority of people, if you give it to them in a convenient format at a reasonable price, they're going to buy it. I think and I think Louis C.K. proved that. Sure, some people stole it, and Arcade Fire did it before, right? They had that album
Oasis.
Well, not just Louis C.K. proved it. I mean, Steve Jobs 10 years ago proved it. I mean, he got on stage and said, "Look, piracy is a problem," because at that time you had LimeWire, and you had Mozilla, and you had not Mozilla, but you had Napster and all the different things. And he said, "You know what? I think genuinely people are good and they want to pay for their content." Now, he may have been a little Pollyanna about it, but still, he said, "Look, here is a legal way to get your stuff in a digital format." Now, he only did it with the recording artist, which some would say was he was short-sighted in that point because he never really got around to doing it in the way that he did with music. He never got around to doing it with the MPAA. And I think had he lived longer, he probably would have.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. But I mean, they did start with a whole lot of DRM on their stuff, and that's why I never bought anything on iTunes back in the day. And then as soon as Amazon came out with DRM-free music, that's when I started buying everything online rather than buying the CD and ripping it. So it's interesting. But he started out with a very restrictive. I still have some. But
it was a way, though. It was a way to do it other than illegally.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it was 99 cents for a song, and they let people buy the song, and everybody, it's the end of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But people are still making money. I think we've seen the end of everything many, many times, even in my life. So, I don't want to get into this too much, because I'll say this much about PIPA and SOPA. One of the biggest complaints from Chris Dodd, and I don't care what he calls himself, he's a freaking lobbyist. He goes, "You know what? We're losing money and we're losing jobs." And he points to Avatar, which is funny. He points to Avatar because Avatar was one of the most downloaded and most file shared movies of all time. It was also one of the most highest grossing movies of all time. Yeah.
So what's your complaint?
Right, and then the other thing is just the variance of experience. I mean, that's why movie theaters still exist, because there's no reason for a movie theater to exist anymore, right? You can have a much better technical experience at home, but that's not what it's about.
I would take issue with that, though, because real quickly, I went to see Mission Impossible, the latest one, at the IMAX. I don't have an IMAX at my house.
Right.
I don't have the money to have an IMAX at my house. One of the best visual movies I have seen in a very long time.
Right. But they're selling something there, particularly that you cannot get at home. And
Exactly.
I think that's exactly. But I think, for other than, the ironic thing is you picked that movie because I saw that in my hometown movie theater over the holidays. I was visiting my father, and it was the worst experience I ever had in a movie theater because it was literally 35 millimeter film. That I don't think they've cleaned the projector since 1978.
Oh, jeez.
And it was they literally had and being an old projectionist, I knew what the guy had to do, but so much dirt got into the audio head in the projector, they had to stop the thing twice, go clean it only after I complained. But half the audience sat there, and it was literally unintelligible, for half of it, and it was horrendous. But still, that's the only option these people have to see this movie in the small town where I grew up, so they're still out there going to see it. So
that's ironic because the little DLP logo comes up, and I go, "Oh, it's DLP," and my wife's like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, it's the mirrors, honey."
Well, and it's funny because I actually wanted to go see that movie again in a much better theater because I felt like, it was horrendous.
You definitely should.
Yeah,
there are certain scenes of that movie, not to ruin it for anybody, but there are certain scenes of that movie that make it worth the extra $2 or $3 I think I paid for the IMAX. So.
Oh, definitely. Although, I can get on a whole rant about IMAX, but it's not actually IMAX film that you're watching, and that was it. I think it's video projection. Oh, you said it's DLP.
It's DLP, yeah.
Okay.
So it's not
just a big screen.
It's a big screen, but there were certain scenes apparently that were shot on IMAX film.
Oh yeah, quite. Yeah, I'm sure there were. Well, I don't know that movie was shot on film, but
it was shot with the widescreen thing. So
right, definitely shot with a higher resolution than most people are going to see it in.
Yeah. All right, this has been fun. You're listening to AV Week with John Huntington and George Tucker. The New York Times, which is not a publication we typically go for here at the old AV Week, not because there's anything wrong with them. They typically don't write about AV stuff. They wrote a piece about the security of video conferencing. And real quickly, we'll kind of synopsisize it here, if that's a word. Mike Tuchin and H.D. Moore of Rapid7, it's a security company in Boston, they went around and hacked a number of video conferencing systems around the country. And they go on to say, that this guy, he was able to control the camera and zoom in and see the grain of the wood in the conference table. One conference room they hacked. They panned the camera around to the window and got to zoom across the street and watch the bushes. This is becoming this is the maturing of video conferencing systems, where now 10 years ago they were running on ISDN lines, and so you really couldn't unless you had some high tech equipment to hack. Now they're running over IPs. And so they're open in general to the open web. John, is this a downside to securities or to video conferencing systems, or is this just, hey guys, here's a security flaw, can you go fix it now?
Well, I think it's actually a market for AV professionals to get in there, and I would bet that this is just the same old default passwords and open things that, and even said in the article that basically I've forgotten which system it was, but it was basically configured by default to accept incoming calls without any sort of challenge or anything.
Yes.
And I'm sure that'll be closed after this article came out. But I think it's just anytime these things, you take a complex system and then they just have some, I don't know. I think some of the venture capitalists and things like that they talk about in the article really have no excuse, because they should have full-time AV IT people there, dealing with this stuff. And I'm sure they would have thought about it. But I'm feeling they were talking about finding thousands of them. I'm sure a lot of them are a small, law firm or company somewhere that just gets this thing out of the box and plugs it in and doesn't think twice about it.
But see, even those guys should know better than that, because there's a big law firm here in St. Louis called Bryan Cave, and they have a number of different offices around the country. They use VC a lot when it comes to depositions and it comes to interviewing people and stuff like that. That's a huge legal issue.
Yeah. Again, more job opportunities for us, I think. And the I don't know if it works that interesting, but it's good for the expertise in our industry. But I think there's always going to be. Do you guys know Kevin Mitnick?
Yes.
Yeah, he just had a book came out. I've heard him speak at the hacker conferences before, but he's a guy who was chased by the FBI and stuff and the Secret Service. And hilarious stories because one of them, he actually literally just outran the agent. So that's how he got away. But the guy's very, very sharp. He's on Twitter, but he has a great book. I think it's called Ghosts in the Wires that just came out in the last few months. But the real threat, I think, to any of these things is the vast majority of his exploits were really, and he was, when you said ISDN lines are secure, you're absolutely right, way more secure than anything on the public internet. But even those, he was able to get inside most phone companies, mostly through social engineering. So I think the real key is a more, I have a feeling this security consultant, this guy's business went up 8,000% after this article came out. So I always take these a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's sort of like no big news to me that people would leave systems open. But I think the even bigger threat would be somebody showing up in a FedEx uniform at the front desk. That guy is more of a threat than anybody sitting at home, hacking into these systems.
That's exactly that's exactly the kind of thought I had, John, especially the social engineering. My first thought when I read this is, if you've been someone who's done teleconferencing systems, especially for corporate, you've known this forever. You've seen, let me find a test line. Oh, what's that? It's not the test line, but hey, it's somebody's boardroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's been known for years. So I blame both the install base and the manufacturing for not stressing security enough. I have a friend whose main job, he just fell into it, was doing depositions, and his main job is securing video conferencing systems for depositions. Right. That's his job. He goes in, he assesses what's going on, and he goes, here you go. And he charges a boatload for it. It's a great thing he fell into. And he become the default expert because no one else was doing it and everyone ignored it. But this brings me back to the thing. If you're not paying attention to it, I know it's technical, but it's program or be programmed, people. With the social engineering, if you're not aware of what can possibly happen, and please think about it for a minute, someone can social engineer you easily. Just like the Mitnick thing now. And for those who didn't know him, he's a hacker. He wound up starting making blue boxes and green boxes, where those things that used to fool pay phones into thinking you dropped a coin so you'd get a free call. But they were chasing him for a number of reasons. But the main reason wasn't that he broke into somebody's computer, but that he was selling the parts for these boxes, which is what Steve Jobs did with Wozniak before they started Apple.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I wrote a blog post on it a couple of years ago, saying, he's lost his mojo. Don't you remember when you were a teenage anarchist there, Mr. Jobs? Because you were. Woz still is.
It's probably more Wozniak than Jobs, I think, in that case.
But Jobs was making them and selling them. Jobs actually sold those things.
Oh, sure, yeah, he was always
he wasn't arrogant. I mean, he was a beatnik. He was a hippie. He was, the whole counterculture of San Francisco at the time of the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But I think even if you read the early days, that stuff. I mean, he was definitely a salesman from day one, and I think that was the whole. And Wozniak, I've heard him speak too, and you hear him getting excited about how he did the video on the Apple II. I mean, it was a really cool hack on the chip and stuff. I don't think you ever heard Jobs talking about that. He was always about how much he's going to sell and how much he's going to make. Not that, it's certainly a valuable partnership, but I think people attribute a lot of stuff to him. And I think everybody, if you're in New York, Mike Daisy's show is coming back called the Agony and the Ecstasy of Steve Jobs, and he was on This American Life in the last month. And Daisy's sort of the ultimate Apple fanboy, and ended up going to China to see how iPhones are manufactured and stuff. And I've been a fan of his for probably 10 years, but that's coming back to the Public Theater in New York. But if you just look on This American Life and look for Mike Daisy, he actually cut out all the part about Steve Jobs for a time. He just focused on the Chinese manufacturing part. But anybody that's an Apple fan should see this show.
Yeah,
very good.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Next up, guys.
Way off topic now.
No, that's all right. Hey, you know what? I'll talk about Apple all day long. So
that's right.
And I'm just happy to have somebody who can talk. And John, I'm just happy to have someone on the show who can talk as tangentially as I do, more so. So thank you.
That's right.
And Georgia's wife appreciates it too. So from CE Pro, Hitachi is going to stop making TVs, and this kind of comes on the heels of Sony getting out of the LCD business with their partnership with Samsung. And not really, honestly, I don't know what Sony's doing right now, because they said, hey, we're not doing OLED and we're not doing LCDs anymore. But hey, here's this pretty thing called Crystal. which some industry people have said is OLED. It's just Sony being Sony and saying, hey, it's not really. It's called crystal because it's what we said. So, but
sounds like crystal meth.
That's the first thing I thought.
Okay.
You know what? First thing I thought was Crystal Pepsi, but that's a whole weird 20-year-old reference. So
there's probably more crystal meth in your area than crystal Pepsi, I would imagine.
I would imagine, yes. I think Missouri is still the meth capital of the country. So yeah, just on the other side.
Watch Winter's Bone, another amazing movie about that. Really depressing, but it's all about the crystal meth trade down in southern Missouri.
Lovely.
So bring us down, John. Go ahead.
That's right.
That's it. No, but George, here's a question for you. I mean, and this also comes off the heels of the lawsuit that not just Hitatchi but other LCD manufacturers settled, saying, yeah, we kind of did some price fixing, and yeah, we kind of colluded and said we're not going to do LCDs for any less than this. So price fixing agreement and Sony getting out of LCDs, and now Hitachi's getting out of LCDs. What's going on here?
Well, I think, as you said, they did it to themselves. We've talked about on these shows about the old days of flat panels were a profit center for installers because no one was doing it. You couldn't really get a flat panel. And then all the manufacturers decided that they wanted to get a mass market appeal, and they sold them for less, sometimes losing money. And then when they figured out, hey, we're losing too much money, they started to collude with each other to keep prices at least high to make some bit of a profit. But guess what? Your consumers didn't want to go for that. You got them used to that price. So you did it to yourselves, boys. You colluded. You put the price way too low, grabbing for the greed to see if you can get market share and corner the market. And now you're getting out of it because you lost money on it. Yeah. Do we have to go back to Adam Smith? This is basic economics, people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And what may be beneficial to the ones who remain, obviously, is the law of supply and demand. If fewer manufacturers making it, there's still demand for flat panels because it's what we've been now sort of trained to want and have, and damn, we do want them. The prices will probably go up, and there'll be a healthy profit for the companies who remain. Again, classic Adam Smith.
Yep. Okay, so John, is this more LCD or is this more flat panels in general, or is this just about LCDs because of the OLEDs coming out and everything, and LED becoming more and more prevalent?
Yeah, I honestly haven't followed that industry that closely, but it just I would probably agree with what George was saying. It just seems like classic supply and demand stuff to me, because despite price fixing and fines, and I just was reading the link off the page there. It's interesting that the payments in that fine for the price fixing, Samsung was $240 million and Hitachi is $39 million. So that I am feeling that's based on market size. So it shows you that they were like a smallish player in that market anyway. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like if there was money to be made, whatever the fines, I'm sure they would still be in the business.
Yeah, I would assume.
And I don't think this is an OLED or anything like that yet, because most people are keeping their monitors and televisions longer. So just like Blu-ray, it has some impact, but it's not a huge market Blu-ray anymore. I mean, they fought it out too long. You can't make people transition this quickly. That's not the reason. I'm sorry, it can't be.
Well, it's funny. I bought a Blu-ray player because it actually had the Netflix streaming built in.
Exactly.
So it's like,
you know what's funny about that? I was talking with my buddy Kevin Iselli. He works for Crestron. He made the comment. He goes, I've got like 9 devices that does Netflix, and that's true.
Right.
Because honestly, I have a Wii that has Netflix. I have an Xbox that has Netflix. Most Blu-rays anymore that have Netflix. A lot of TVs, the app's built in, they're going to have it. I mean, it's kind of silly how many different devices you can get Netflix on.
But most of those are better than what I used to do, is like plugging the laptop in and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, but those services still have a fault that I've been finding lately. My kids, we watched over the Christmas holiday. AMC had the Marx Brothers marathons on.
Mm.
My 4 and 6-year-old have been addicted to the Marx Brothers now. They love Duck Soup. Can we watch that old movie, Dad? Guess what? I can't find it anywhere. It's not on Netflix. Yeah. It's not on any of the other online services, so I still need to find the physical medium.
Yeah.
So we're dropping the ball somewhere on this. I know this is really transcendental, but if you're going to prevent me from getting it, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's not there because there's some licensing agreement that nobody can get access to. I don't know. Yeah, but you should be able to serve it to me.
But you would pay $2 for that or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Definitely.
without having to go buy the
Absolutely.
physical CD. And I think that all that stuff with the physical DVDs and all that is really just about rights and marketing and rights issues. It has nothing to do with, there's no rational, content delivery reason not to have it in every format. It's just about people, big studios trying to ham-handedly protect their content.
Well, maybe it's not just that either. It's making sure that because they've got contracts that are 50 years old. I mean, I'm not sure, how far back some of this revenue share goes, but if you've got Tom Cruise from Risky Business and, if you sell a DVD, he's going to get, $1 or $2 from that. And what does that look like when you sell it online? What does that look like when you offer it up to streaming? And so some of this, they're handcuffed and they're handicapped based on their own past contracts.
Exactly, yeah.
And so maybe it's time that they, as an industry, go, okay, guys, let's wholesale look at all of this old stuff. Because I agree with George. Give it to me in a way that I want to consume it. And by and large, they have done that to a point. But there are also those things, like the old movies, like some of the stuff that you want to get at, that's just not available for whatever reason. And so maybe they need to go back to their agreements and say, how do we make this work? Tom Cruise, how do we make this work? Or whoever,
Well, I think the interesting thing, I think that we're seeing as a consumer, I think we're seeing increasing fragmentation, and I think that's not going to stop anytime soon because you're going to get this from here and that from there and that from there. But as long as you can get it all on one thing, then, and I think what's interesting in terms of that is that I think right now the sort of PC has always been the sort of last resort. Like you can always get on that. It's, PC or Mac or whatever. It's always more or less an open platform, a browser or whatever. But what's really interesting, I think it was Cory Doctorow just did a talk called the End of the General Purpose PC, which was very interesting because talking about how everything's a device now, and if it's an Apple device, then it's controlled by them, and they limit what can be on it, and if it's this and that. But right now the Mac or PC desktop is still pretty much open, and he had a fascinating thing to read. It's on Boing Boing, I think, from about a month ago. But it's interesting to see where all that's heading.
Love Cory Doctorow. So funny you say that, and it's a nice transition into our next story from System Contractor News. Epson has introduced it's a free app called iProjection, and the reason I say it's a good transition because this allows you to take what's on your iPad or your iPhone or your iPod Touch and shoot it to an Epson projector that has wireless and stuff like that. So if you've got Hulu or if you have a PowerPoint presentation or whatever's on your iPad, you can send up to the projector. Now, John, you and I are education guys. I can imagine a world not too far from here where, as an instructor, you are walking around the classroom and you walk in with your iPad and you start the presentation, you turn on the projector, and there it is. Or you want to take them to YouTube, or you want to take them to Hulu, or whatever else it is that's on your iPad, and show it to them there. And there's nothing on here that says, at least in the article, that talks about content production, so I don't know if it handles that or not. My assumption is that it does, but again, we all know what happens when I assume things blow up. So, do you see this as a viable solution to what you were talking about? You got all these disparate things, these different ways that we can get content if we use something like the iPad or whatever tablet to kind of coagulate them together and then shoot them to our displays. Does that solve the problem?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because reading that article, it says the app is compatible with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Keynote, PDF, JPEG, and PNG. All of those are more still oriented, but also
Dropbox and Gmail and stuff.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I think I'm critically reading some press release ease here, and it seems to me I'm not sure if this thing does video.
Okay,
actual movie, it does stills, which is great because PowerPoint mostly or Excel. I use PowerPoint in my classes and stuff like that, and certainly look at images would be great. But I don't know. Again, for me, I'm an Android guy, so being limited to Apple And at my school, we can't get any handheld devices even on the network. So, I mean, that's a bigger problem than getting onto the content.
Is that a network issue or administration issue?
Oh, it's administration. They have a really restrictive network access control, and they have to buy licenses for every device that goes on the network, and they haven't bought any for... They're just now doing iPads, but... So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's cool stuff, but I have a feeling it's things that get a little too proprietary for me end up being less interesting. Then it's an Epson thing, and it works with Apple products, and it works with these like 8 things. So if you use those 8 things, it's great. But I don't know that to me, it's not. If I could bring my laptop in now and run a VGA cable to the projector, and it doesn't seem to offer me much beyond that, other than a little bit of convenience. And then a lot of headache of I think anytime you put something on a radio link, you're asking for trouble. So,
granted, anytime you do wireless over wire, there are drawbacks to that. So, George, is this what do you think about this product where you can wirelessly send it up to a projector?
Well, I mean, guys have been doing it for a little while now. I mean, there's been some of that established from your laptop. You could buy a dongle and do it with some of these guys, but I'd like to see it video. As John said, right. I also didn't see Google Docs or Google, that kind of stuff, which I use a lot of. So if I have my presentation, I want to do it from there. Why not? You guys can do it, please. It sounds interesting, but it sounds very limited. I know the education guys force a PowerPoint. That would work, sure. But are you really using that much PowerPoint? I said, John, you said you use it occasionally, but I don't know how often you use it.
No,
I use it. Obviously.
Yeah, I use it pretty much in every class, if nothing else, just as an outline for me. Right. I think PowerPoint gets a bad name because people use it wrong, but I don't think, and this is something I think comes across almost everything that we do, but there's lots of research showing that people learn in different ways, and some people are visual learners, some are auditory, and that's true whether you're in a classroom or a corporate presentation. So I think, I've been to presentations, unless it's a really amazing speaker, somebody like Mike Daisy, who I just mentioned. Having that visual information up there for me is very helpful because I tested myself, 10 years ago, and it turns out I'm a read-write learner. So I have to see it in order to remember it. Even though I'm a sound guy, you would think it would be auditory. Same way So anyway, yeah, PowerPoint I use every class, but the key is just don't use it badly. Don't read every slide, all the basic things like that. Yeah. And then, and to me, I just put it up there, and then it's a reminder. It's like the outline that I would use plus some, visual aids, and I just give it to them visually instead of. Whenever I do something like that, I need an outline to make sure I don't forget things. So
yeah, and I'm sort of the same way.
I agree. I mean, I'm doing this week, Thursday and Friday, I just did basic Ethernet for some of the shop guys because, we got lots of testers here and guys who, fix gear, but they don't always understand how to do the networking and Ethernet stuff. So, yes, I did do my Google presentation. But, yeah, I mean, I could see that, I guess, if I had it on a wireless iPad, it would work. I don't know so much about an iPhone. It just seems like, let's include that.
Well, yeah, but I think what it was is the press release said something like all iOS devices, at least starting at 4.2 or something. So
yeah.
But I can see if you're a salesman or something and you have one presentation you give over and over every day, then a solution like that would be pretty cool. You roll in with your iPhone and a little Epson projector, and away you go, and it's easy to carry and... So, yeah, I don't know in the education market, but it certainly seems to be a market for it.
Alrighty. Well, you're listening to AVWeek. That's John Huntington. He is from the Entertainment Technology. He's professor of Entertainment Technology at City Tech in New York, and also George Tucker with the World Stage. Coming up, we're going to talk about 4K, InfoComm and IATSE, and getting physical things downloaded at Pirate Bay. I'm going to let George do that one. So, but first, it's time for the AVWeek Job of the Week. Brought to you by Rave Pubs, ravepubs.com/AVjobs, ravepubs.com/AVjobs. This is a Western area sales director for RGB Spectrum. Go to rgb.com to take a look at what the qualifications are, or to give them your resume. Go to rgb.com or send your resume to hr@rgb.com. Gentlemen, there's something that has come by, and I know George and John, I don't know your feelings on 3D, but George and I hate it. Let's just start there. Let's not pull any punches here.
George and you, what was it?
We hate it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
We don't like 3D. It is of the devil.
And have you seen, I don't know if you guys mentioned it, but the best, I'm just giving out links today to random things, but the best treatise on why it doesn't work that I've seen is by Walter Murch. Have you seen that? Walter Murch he was the sound editor on Apocalypse Now, and then he was also the film editor, sort of like co-film editor, and then he did the Redux, and then a whole bunch of Coppola films. But brilliant film editor, and he's written several books on editing and that type of thing for the general public, which is great. But anyway, if you search Roger Ebert and Walter Murch sent Roger Ebert, who's also a hater of 3D, an email and about why it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. And Ebert reprinted it, and I think he's dead on. And the key reason is just that it's tiring because from an evolutionary basis, our eyes are not used to converging at a place where they're focused at a different plane. Mm-hmm. So if you're focused at a screen 10 feet away, but your brain is converged on a virtual point 100 feet away, then that's sort of draining. And Murch goes through all that whole thing, and it's really great. So yeah, I think it's I think it's a fad, and kind of it'll always be around. It has been. It's been around forever. It never really went away. But as a mass market thing, it's not. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and I find it annoying mostly.
Well, it's kind of ebbed and flowed since what was it, the 20s or 30s. So
yeah.
But
it's certainly been pitched as the ultimate solution for everything at least 100 times, and that's never come true.
Well,
and it would have.
Here is the death of 3D. I'll say that just to be ornery. But it's not really. But here is the next big thing. How about that? It's called 4K, and to give you guys kind of a basis or kind of something to wrap your brain around this. Standard definition television is 720 by 480, right? Is that roughly right? The resolution for 4K is 4096 by 2160. 720 to 4096. That's a big picture. And here's the other thing that it does. HD is 1920 by 1080. It's full HD. So it's even bigger than that. It's not quite. It's 3 times as big as that. So here is, to me at least, the next big thing. My issue, though, and George, we'll start with you. Just like 3D, there is no content. So why on earth are they just going to continue to do this? Here's a display. Now go make some content for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. It sounds cool, and I like the movie idea, but in the article they even mentioned how the movie, there was one movie, but there was no theaters that could do it. Yeah. Yes, is progress good? Should we push forward to be better and better? Yes, but it seems that they coming closer and closer in development cycles, and there's no chance to catch up. So are we looking at just working in niche markets and dreaming, and then it'll trickle down in 20 years to us? Okay. I mean, HD took, almost 10 years for it to really take hold, and that was by force, really. I mean, if they didn't enforce that whole HD and DTV thing, we might still be having 2 markets, right? HD would be for the special people, and you do the movies, and this. I think it's a great opportunity if some of it catches off for installers, for market, for some kind of economic, generating some more economic activity. But will it come anytime soon? I don't know. I think maybe we're future casting on this. It looks cool, but my biggest thing with it, though, is the article had 2 things that I really loved. One, it had a name, as they call it, quad?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know me, I love to use quad as sort of a...
Quad HD.
Yes. Okay, and I guess most people are saying, let's not use that. It has a bad sort of association. Although I thought those quad albums were pretty cool. And it's the only article I've seen the use of boffin. Did anyone else catch that?
No, I didn't catch that.
It uses the word boffin. I thought that was pretty cool, and that's what I got out of the article.
Jeez, I'm going to start some new stuff. John, is this something, because you do a lot of live stage work, is this where we'll see it first, is in the live environment? Because I remember 20 years ago, the Zoo Tours, Zoo TV with U2, that was the first time I ever saw, really live video for staging take place, and that was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think as a display format, as a consumer format, I think it's not going to go anywhere. And I think we've seen this movie over and over and over and over that unless there's a really compelling, dramatic shift from even. And I think you look at something like from SD TV up to HD TV, it was like sports and stuff like that is where it really started catching on. Mm-hmm. But I think as a consumer format, I don't think it's going anywhere. But as an acquisition format, I think it's important, and because there's a lot of reasons to acquire things at very high resolutions and quality, even if they're being displayed at lower quality, because once you edit it and stuff. And I'm still like another person. I seem to be every story. I'm seem to be to go read this other one. Maybe we should put some links up.
Okay, but, we can do
that. Mark Shubin. George must know Mark Shubin.
I know Mark Shubin.
So just Google him and 4K, and he has a great piece on why it's good for some things, and it goes back to the history from 1920 and all that stuff about. I think HD TV. I was looking at it this morning, and I think it goes back to 1923 or something like that, and it said that HD TV had to be 200 lines or more or something like that. But then I think the other thing is what we sell as a live event, I think always has to be well and far and above this. The standard watch-out rig or a Hitatchi or whatever that George's shop would put out would be running way above this resolution, or could be running way above this resolution on a everyday basis. And my friend Jonathan Dean's a sound designer. Would talking people ask him about 5.1 sound, and if you go see some of the Cirque du Soleil shows, you're seeing like 400.24 sound or something like that. And it's So when you get into this sort of big live shows that we do, I mean, all this stuff is kind of it's not that interesting. I mean, but again, to acquire in that format, I think is good. But as a consumer format, I mean, the thing is, you look at the audio market, the number of things they came out with super high resolution, whatever, that died back to digital compact cassette. I don't know if anybody remembers that one.
Oh, yeah.
And then DAT, those are both made as consumer formats, and they both bombed and became a sort of niche professional format. So something like that could happen with this. But yeah, you can, there's niche applications for it, but as a wide mass market product, I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Okay.
Doesn't mean a rich lawyer won't buy that big screen.
Well, that's true.
And then he'll show 4x3 standard definition content on it.
his slides from Niagara Falls. So,
but it's big,
and it'll be stretched in the wrong aspect ratio,
and he'll look like 10 pounds heavier, or worse, his wife will look 10 pounds heavier.
That's right.
Well, I mean, that's part of the problem, though, is that with the 4K, they said it needs a bigger display, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be a bigger display to really work well. You're still increasing the size.
Well, that's what
for the home.
Yeah,
huh?
Shubin had a thing on his blog talking about this, where to get an adequate 4K display with the angle resolution of your eye and so on, and I'm terrible remembering numbers, but I think you needed at least like a 9-foot tall ceiling just to fit the display to make it have any real worth.
Yeah.
So in a movie theater or something like that, sure, but at the home, Donald Trump can buy one.
Yeah, Donald Trump could buy two of them, so one for each wife or whatever. So
be watching himself.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm glad.
I look beautiful. Look at that.
Look at my hair.
Did you know that hair is not a comb over?
Just, what? What?
Seriously. Did you know that his hair is not a comb over? He's not going bald. He just likes it that way.
George.
Really?
I'm just going to call you Squirrel from now on.
I know.
Squirrel! I'm sorry, yes. It's not a comb over. What is it?
It's just he likes it that way.
Oh.
So it looks like a classic comb over, but they've actually shown photographs of him. It's like, yeah, he's got a widow's peak, but
wow.
Hey, look, the more you know.
Yeah. I'm glad we have John on today because of this article here. It's IATSE and InfoComm kind of coming together. So what it is IATSE and InfoComm. IATSE they've got prepaid access for their IA members to take classes for examination and other certifications and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, I don't want to say that IATSE and InfoComm are at odds by any stretch of the imagination, but they're two separate industries. Is that fair to say, John?
Actually, I would disagree because the traditional, like I'm a member of Local 1 here in New York, and we have members that do high-end video projection and things like that. So we don't really address the sort of consumer or home market, but certainly, and there's in fact even in there's whole locals of the IA that only do AV stuff. So they're both together. So it's not the traditional, necessarily the traditional sort of standard depiction of a stagehand, but definitely the IA itself, which also covers wardrobe people and ticket booth and all kinds of things that are all related to the industry. But yeah, I think that we do a lot of AV.
Maybe that's where I was going with that, because of the various other aspects of IA. That with InfoComm, it's like, that is what they do. That it's the techs,
right.
It's the programmers and stuff like that. It's not just the costumers and stuff like that. So, George, is this a good thing with us coming together with IA?
Well, I mean, I work in the industry where we work closely with IA, so yes, any knowledge and any kind of further education is great. John, what was the training like prior to this? I mean, was it just union-based? Was it manufacturer-based? I know that Scharf Weisberg used to do some events at the Brooklyn Tech, right, to teach IA guys some technology stuff.
Well, it's pretty fragmented. The local one that I'm a member of does its own training. Different locals can do different things. This particular one is coming out of what it's called in the IAV International, which is also, they're based here in the city, but they actually represent all of the United States and Canada together. So this seems to be being coordinated by the national office, and I think it's just happened, so we'll kind of have to see how it trickles down. But I think overall it's really good, because between this and I helped to write one of the certification exams for what used to be ESTA, is now Plaza, the ETCP. In the 25 years or so I've been in the business, we've gone from that'll work to really getting serious about this stuff with certifications. And that's partly because we're working for bigger employers now. You have Disney and Cablevision and people like that. But overall, I think it's good. I think the more knowledge is out there, and the more somebody can get something that means something nationally, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know back in my first iteration here at the staging company, when we worked on Broadway, some of the electricians, they put them with me when I was doing programming for this automation system for the slides. And I taught them, and they were eager to learn, but there was no other place for them to learn it.
Exactly.
In fact, I got offered to be brought into the union. The shop steward was like, here's how you would do it. I couldn't do it, one, because I couldn't do the hours anymore, and they wanted me to start as I forget what the lowest level was, apprentice or something, where I would be taking a pay cut at that point, and it would take me 5 years to make it back. It would be much better, I think, over the long term, but it was one of those things where, like, you guys really, that's when, some of the companies started saying, hey, we'll help teach. We're a shop, so we'll help teach. But yeah, this more cohesive, a more centralized education system for the IA is a great, great thing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of education, we've got another story about that. Stanford, this past semester, they basically opened up a bunch of their classes for free. What it was is a bunch of the guys got together and said, hey, let's kind of open it up to the world. They let anybody that wanted to attend online. They did the quizzes, they asked questions, and they could even get grades, all for free. Now, we have a new show on the AVNation network called EdTech, and one of the guys on there, Matthew Silverman, actually did this, was a part of this, and he said it was cool. It was a good experience. It was free, it was online. However, a guy at Stanford, a student at Stanford, actually wrote a blog post slamming this idea and slamming this whole turning the whole classroom around thing, saying, look, I pay good money to go to Stanford. I want a seat in a classroom, And so, George, we'll start with you on this. Is this kind of like the Motion Picture Association, that industry? Is this kind of like the education industry's growing pains with the internet and with internet-based education?
Yeah, I think so. I'm torn on it, because I get that message. I get that, hey, I want the one-on-one. And I think for such high-level stuff that Stanford was doing, and I think MIT was playing with the idea for a while.
MIT actually has an entire open curriculum. I don't think you get grades, but all their course materials are open.
Right,
I think for every
NPR,
class, actually.
Right. Didn't NPR do a thing on that, I think, a couple of weeks ago?
Well, and you've got places like iTunes University where all of these lectures are on. You don't get grades, but you can watch them.
Right. And I think that's the difference. Like, if you want real grades for some kind of institution like Stanford, the physical building being there, I agree. There's certain things you can't learn unless you're there in the. I mean, look, you can't do an autopsy remotely.
Give them time, George.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, you could, but hear me out on that. There's things you cannot do unless you're in the classroom, and that level of education should take place at such an institution while you're there. But educating the masses, and the point they made in one of these radio shows I was listening to about it was, there's people in certain remote parts of the country or parts of different continents that aren't getting to that class, but the education is needed. You're not going to grow your business, your community and your communities without education. The United States has a severe problem with technical knowledge, technical education and degrees. We're slipping. And people aren't going to college, or if they are, they're only going for a little while. If this is an alternative to increase the education and the knowledge of a citizenry, it's the best thing. And you're going to have to deal with the fact that, yes, it's not just a special institution for you only anymore.
Yeah.
But I would say Stanford should start worrying about it when their applications start declining, and I have a feeling that's not happening.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, I think I think it's brilliant marketing. Here we are talking about Stanford and how great they are. It's just more brilliant marketing for them. And I think, the key part is they're giving away all this knowledge and information, which is fantastic. I don't know how they're grading 100,000 students. I mean, that has to be automated quizzes and stuff. You're not getting any one-on-one with professor, which is what you pay for. And I think that the focus and the access that's never going to go away. When I started teaching about 1999, I think there was another one of these online universities going to replace everything. Boom. That's when there's like Phoenix and some of those for-profit colleges start, and that's fine. Those we teach some stuff online, not so much in my department. I would say why in a minute, but it's great for certain people in certain situations that can't get to the college or they have busy family obligations or whatever, but they have to be really motivated to do that. And I took an online meteorology class from Penn State, which is a fascinating experience. But it was always to me a little bit frustrating in a bunch of ways. But anyway, when I first started, we were looking at grants and stuff to develop this course material because that is an enormous amount of work to get this stuff to the point where it can exist online and be without a lot of support and stuff. It's one thing to sort of toss together a lecture and or whatever and put that up, but to have something that's really interactive and where people can really learn is a giant amount of work. And we ended up, or I would say I went through this whole thing, and in the end I just realized a lot of the stuff that we teach is by its nature is hands-on and just doesn't really translate very well to that kind of online thing. There are certainly things that do, and I think talking about programming and stuff like that, you're sitting in front of a computer anyway, then that's a great application for it.
Yeah.
But I think it's nothing to worry about. I think it's a thing that's great. I think the more information that's out there, if you have 100,000 people learning about cool stuff, that's great.
And John, the 100,000 tests, those are graded by graduate assistants. So
yeah, that's right.
I say that as a GA. So you listen to AV.
But I think
Week.
You're grading a couple hundred, not 100,000.
Yeah, that's what that meant.
If they hired grad students, that would be. I don't think that there's enough. You could hire enough for that.
No. You're listening to AV Week with John Huntington from City Tech and George Tucker from World Stage. Real quickly, a couple more articles. One comes from Hidden Wires. It's a UK publication, and they talk about the CEDIA Expo in China. This is late last year, but my thing is, and this guy goes on to say, is basically his whole synopsis of this thing is that China is the next big market for AV. And George, we'll start with you. Is China something that is that an area where where manufacturers need to start focusing, and maybe even integrators need to start partnering with people, like partnering with local guys to get talented people, qualified people, trained AV techs over there to help grow this market?
Yes. Duh. It's been happening for a while, hasn't it? I mean, and that's not at you, but even some of the manufacturers I've worked for in the past, we're sending lots of stuff over there. They have whole divisions that are over there. What was the big fracas that happened with was it GE's X-Ray? people are claiming that they were sending the entire production of X-ray machines over there, but no, they were going there to say, we're going to produce in China for China. It's a growing market. There's 1 billion people over there. Exactly. That's a market. I mean, I don't know about your math, but that's a market. And as they get richer, and a lot of news agencies have done stories about this, as a middle class is developing in China, they want some nicer things. They're still living in very small spaces as we are sort of going from big to small. But they want some of the nicer stuff. They want that controllable thermostat. They do want the fancy remote for the TV and the big TV. Of course, it's a huge market. I know that manufacturers like Crestron and AMX have gone over to the Asian expos back in the 80s. So that market is ready to burst, and it's one place to be. You have to protect yourself, because I'm sure that we all know of the problems with counterfeiting and remanufacturing. And one of the places I worked for actually got a unit back from a Asian client saying, please fix. We couldn't fix it. We didn't know why. Guess what? We found out they copied the board down to the chip numbers silkscreened on it.
Wow. And
manufactured it themselves. But there is a huge market there regardless.
And I would say just look at Macau, which is there's the number of massive shows over there with massive amounts of AV technology is just unbelievable. But for the most part, so far, for a lot of the expertise, they've been hiring people from the West. So again, I think it's all good.
Well, and we'll take that and go into our last story, and that is on the Pirate Bay now. You can, which if you don't know Pirate Bay is one of the most infamous piracy sites online. I'm not going to give you the website, but it is a file sharing site. You can download what they're calling Visibles, and I think I'm saying that right. But John, this is something where you can go on, and if you have a 3D printer, which those do exist, or some sort of mock-up technology, you can take this file and recreate a physical object. So you could take, an iPod, and if you had all of the, if you had the blueprints for it, you could recreate it down to, like George said, the chip number.
Well, I think that's a long way off, because the thing they're actually the most popular 3D printer that I'm aware of right now is the MakerBot, which is actually made here in Brooklyn, and and I've been over there. I know the guys over there. They just came out with a new model that we have one at school. We're actually in the process of assembling it. It takes about 25 hours to put it together. We have a couple of them on the way. But, I think it's really cool because there's nothing up there that you couldn't just get with a laser scanner and just scan some object. In fact, I saw a really amazing thing. This comedian, this guy, Jeff Dunham, I'm sorry, not comedian, comedian and ventriloquist, Jeff Dunham.
Yep.
He has a 3D printer. He has a pretty very high-end one and a scanner, and that's how he makes ventriloquist dummies now.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I tried actually to put something on my blog about that, but I couldn't find a clean reference. So if you Google it, there's like
that is true.
Well, I didn't even mean it that way, but I meant if you Google it, you'll find one press release from the 3D printer company, but there's not. I saw it on a TV show.
I thought you were saying that you couldn't find a clean clip from Jeff.
Oh yeah, I don't mind putting that up. But yeah, these at this point, it's really no threat to anything. I think, and MakerBot is a pretty interesting company because all their stuff. They have a very open source model that the MakerBot name is trademarked and stuff like that. But if you make your own, they're not going to come sue you because they feel like they offer good enough service and stuff for that. But basically, all the 3D printers are now there's several different technologies, but these inexpensive ones mostly just melt plastic, sort of like big oversized colored fishing line, and it just sort of heats it up and dabbles it on these points. And they're kind of crude, like the surface that comes out of them is a little bit rough. I mean, there are super high-end prototyping. I think Crestron, I used to have those when George was up there, that use a layer and a pool of resin and stuff like that. But those are like $100,000, $200,000. These things are like $1,000. I think the new one's $2,000, even assembled, which is good. So yeah, I think there's a lot of hype on that page about things that they were talking about printing a meal and stuff, and I think until we're printing at the atomic level, that ain't happening. So, but to print a plastic thing, and there have actually been there was a case, and I have to go find it, but like the knob of somebody's stove broke, and they, GE or whoever wanted $15 for it because it's, they have to stock it and all that stuff. So they just scanned it and made another one, and they got in trouble for that. So I think they put the designs online or something. But I mean, I know that's not they're not really in the market of making knobs, and that market is already so beaten down anyway by all the people making 50 cents a day assembling this stuff. I don't see it as much of a threat. It's really cool stuff, though.
It is cool.
Yeah, we talked a lot about it on the DIY show with some guests who actually do this stuff. And it is, like John said, even with the high-end stuff, it's got a very strange finish to it, and it's not durable, not yet. And there are supposedly ways of making it more durable, but it's still not like the finished product that we buy in the store. How far away is that? I don't know. Maybe 30 years, 40 years when you start to get, or maybe less than that, but I'm going to be over the top there. But you're still not going to be able to buy your car part and replace it with that. Not in the near future, not at least in my kid's lifetime. But the potential for doing some cool stuff is there.
Yeah,
I'll get apocalyptic on you. When apocalyptic on you. When is it when these guys when these devices are going to make the repair parts for itself and become like the Matrix computers?
Okay.
Depends on if you believe Ray Kurzweil or not. That's the.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of like William Gibson, right? William Gibson novels,
Yeah. I don't know. I think we I don't see any of that in my lifetime. So I've been wrong before.
On that happy note,
That's right.
we're going to go ahead. Yeah, Terminator.
When does Skynet become active?
Oh,
yeah, Skynet comes online.
I think didn't we miss
When
that?
does
Was this
that?
year?
Yeah,
we already missed that.
Well, and the what was it? The Back to the Future date is coming up here in a couple of years.
Right.
So, all right, that right there is John Huntington. John, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
ControlGeek.net. He's also the professor of entertainment technology at City Tech in New York, and the author of Control Systems for Live Entertainment. Anything you want to plug or pimp, sir?
No, I think you just did it very well.
Okay.
So thank you.
Well, you know what? There's a first time for everything, John. George Tucker, the engineering coordinator for World Stage. Tucker2s.typepad.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Oh, look at that. And he's also at Tucker2s on Twitter. But he's also one of my right-hand guys and a great producer for this network. He's got the DIY show, The Social. If you haven't checked this out, it's called the AV Social. Go to our website, ravepubs.com/AVNation. Great inaugural show. George, go ahead and kind of tell people, give them a synopsis of what AV Social is.
Well, AV Social is a show for AV installers, business owners, and their folks who are trying to convince them to get onto social media or to do better at it. It involves a bunch of AV guys, like us, doing social media and how we got together to do it, as well as some of the professional marketing people who work in the AV world to talk about the tools, tips, and techniques and how to do it better, and just some good inspiration. The first show has a bunch of people like Scott Moody from Marketing Matters, Dawn Mead that's on the show often, Matt Scott from Omega Audio Video, and a guest that we had come on, Cindy Gallup, who is ifwerantheworld.com, among other things, who was just a remarkable person to speak with about social media, and she kept us all in odd silence at times and actively typing on Twitter about how much we enjoyed just listening to her and really sort of debating whether or not we should just go with it. We're not going to talk anymore. I want to listen to you.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun to have her on. And there's a story about Cindy Gallup and why she came on the show that is really important to a lot of AV guys, and they should listen about it.
No. So that is that's our website, ravepubs.com/AVNation. If you notice the Rave Pubs part, that's where we are now. We've partnered with Rave Publications, Gary Kay and the folks, and so they've made some very pretty, very nice interactive sites for us. ravepubs.com/AVNation. Go there, check out the AV Social, check out DIY, EdTech, Howcast, and of course this show as well. So thanks so much for listening. That's all the time we have for AV Week.